She refused to eat alone. What the billionaire did next left everyone speechless. Marcus Whitmore had everything money could buy, and nothing that mattered. The mansion sprawled across 5 acres of manicured gardens in Connecticut's Gold Coast, its marble floors reflecting chandeliers that cost more than most people's homes. 32 rooms, most of which he'd never entered. A wine cellar stocked with vintages older than he was. Garages housing cars he rarely drove.
And silence.
Always the oppressive silence. He sat alone at the head of a dining table built for 16, picking at his lunch, pan-seared salmon with microgreens, prepared by his private chef. The fork clinked against fine china, the only sound in the cavernous room. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, autumn leaves drifted across the terrace, and he felt kinship with them. Unrooted.
Falling.
Alone. This wasn't how he'd imagined success would feel. Marcus had built his tech empire from nothing, working 100-hour weeks, sacrificing friendships, relationships, everything at the altar of ambition. His parents had passed years ago, and he'd been too busy to maintain connections with extended family. His ex-fiancée had left him 3 years prior, unable to compete with his first love. Work. Now, at 32, he had a net worth that required scientific notation and a heart that felt 3 sizes too small. He pushed the salmon away, appetite gone. What was the point of Michelin star meals eaten in solitude? Down the hall, in the kitchen, the sound of laughter drifted through, a child's giggle, bright as bells. That would be Emma, the daughter of Sarah Chun, his head housekeeper. Sarah had worked for him for 2 years, a quiet, tireless woman who never asked for anything beyond her modest salary. He'd learned only recently that she was a single mother, raising her daughter alone after her husband had died in a construction accident. Marcus had offered to let Sarah bring Emma to work during school holidays and sick days rather than pay for childcare. It was a practical decision, he'd told himself. Sarah was excellent at her job, and this arrangement ensured she wouldn't need to take time off. He certainly wasn't doing it out of kindness. Marcus Whitmore didn't do kindness. Kindness was inefficient. Or so he'd convinced himself. He stood, intending to return to his home office and the acquisition deal that needed his attention, when something made him pause. Through the doorway, he could see into the kitchen where Sarah was setting up a small folding table. Emma, a tiny thing with dark pigtails and overalls, was helping, carrying napkins with intense concentration. "Can we have the blue plate, Mommy?" Emma asked, her voice carrying that particular musicality only 3-year-olds possess. "Of course, sweetheart," Sarah replied, her voice warm in a way that made Marcus's chest constrict with something he couldn't name. He watched as Sarah set out a simple lunch for them. Sandwiches cut into triangles, apple slices, and what looked like homemade cookies. Nothing fancy. Nothing expensive. And yet, Emma's face lit up like she'd been presented with treasure. "It looks so good." Emma clapped her hands together. "Can we say grace?" Marcus found himself leaning against the doorframe, hidden from view, as the mother and daughter clasped hands. Sarah's voice was soft. "Thank you for this food, for this day, and for having each other."
Amen.
"Amen," Emma echoed, then immediately reached for a sandwich. They ate together at that small folding table, Emma chattering about a butterfly she'd seen in the garden, Sarah listening with complete attention despite having probably heard a dozen similar stories already that day. There was something in the way they looked at each other, the ease of their companionship, that struck Marcus like a physical blow. This was what he didn't have. This simple, profound connection. This warmth. This life. He turned away, unsettled, and retreated to his office. But for the rest of the afternoon, he couldn't concentrate on his work. The image of that small folding table kept intruding on his thoughts. The sound of Emma's laughter echoed in his mind. The word togetherness surfaced from some long-buried place in his memory, his own mother calling him to dinner, insisting that family meals mattered, that eating together was about more than food. He'd forgotten. Or perhaps he'd deliberately chosen to forget, because remembering hurt too much. That evening, Marcus found himself standing outside the kitchen again, watching as Sarah cleaned up. Emma was drawing at the counter, humming to herself, completely content in her mother's presence. Sarah noticed him and straightened, immediately professional. "Mr. Whitmore, is there something you need?"
No,
He trailed off, uncertain. What could he possibly say? That watching them had cracked something open inside him? That their simple happiness highlighted the hollowness of his existence? "I just wanted to say thank you for everything you do." Sarah's eyes widened slightly. In 2 years, he'd never thanked her personally. "Of course. It's my job." Still. He nodded awkwardly, then noticed Emma watching him with curious dark eyes. "Hello, Emma." "Hi," she said, then returned to her drawing without ceremony. Children, Marcus reflected as he walked away, had no use for his money or status. They saw through pretense with unnerving clarity. Imogen had looked at him and found him unremarkable, just another adult in her world. He should have found that refreshing. Instead, it made him feel even more invisible than before. As he lay in bed that night in his master suite, a room larger than many apartments, Marcus stared at the ceiling and wondered when he'd last felt truly seen by another human being. When he'd last shared a meal with someone who cared whether he lived or died. When he'd last belonged to something bigger than himself. The questions haunted him into restless sleep, and he dreamed of empty tables stretching into infinity. The next day was a Wednesday, unseasonably warm for late October. Marcus had back-to-back video conferences scheduled, but found his attention wandering to the window overlooking the garden where Emma was playing. Sarah had set her up with some toys on a blanket under the oak tree, and the child seemed perfectly content, creating some elaborate game involving dolls and fallen leaves. At noon, Marcus's stomach growled. He'd skipped breakfast, too absorbed in reviewing quarterly reports. He pressed the intercom button that connected to the kitchen. "Yes, Mr. Whitmore," came Mrs. Patterson's voice. She was the cook, a stern woman in her 60s. "Lunch, please. Whatever's ready." "The usual setup, sir?" "Yes." The usual setup meant a tray brought to wherever he was working, eaten while typing, taste barely registered before moving on to the next task. But 20 minutes later, something unusual happened. Marcus was typing an email when he heard small footsteps in the hallway. He looked up to see Emma standing in his office doorway, her expression serious. "Hello, Emma. Are you lost?" He glanced past her, expecting Sarah to appear.
No.
Emma walked into his office with the confidence of someone who'd never learned to doubt her welcome in the world. She looked around at his floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, his massive desk, his wall of windows. "This is where you work?" "Yes." He waited, unsure of protocol. Did one dismiss a 3-year-old? Offer her a seat? "Why do you eat alone?" Emma asked suddenly. The question caught him off guard. What? Yesterday at lunch. And breakfast. And dinner probably. Mommy says you always eat alone." Emma tilted her head, studying him like a puzzle. "That's sad." Marcus felt heat creep up his neck. "I'm very busy. It's more efficient to eat while working." "That's a silly reason." Emma pronounced this with the absolute certainty of early childhood. "Eating is for being together. That's what makes it good." Before Marcus could formulate a response, Sarah appeared in the doorway, slightly out of breath. "Emma, I'm so sorry, Mr. Whitmore. She slipped away while I was." "It's fine," Marcus said, surprising himself. "She's not bothering me." Emma turned to her mother. "Mommy, can I eat lunch here? With Mr. Marcus?" "Absolutely not," Sarah said firmly. "Mr. Whitmore is working." "Come on, sweetie. Our lunch is ready in the kitchen." "But he shouldn't eat alone." Emma's lower lip trembled. "It's not right, Mommy. You said eating together is important. You said it's how we show love." Sarah's face flushed. "I did say that, but then we should show Mr. Marcus love, too." Emma crossed her arms. "I'm not eating unless he eats with us." Marcus watched this exchange with growing fascination. The child was actually taking a stand, wielding her own hunger as leverage. It was absurd. It was touching. It was completely unexpected. "Emma, that's not how we talk to Mr. Whitmore," Sarah began. "Actually," Marcus heard himself say. What if I did join you? Would that resolve this standoff? Both Sarah and Emma stared at him. Mr. Whitmore, you don't have to, Sarah started. I know. He stood, closing his laptop. But I'm hungry, and apparently I'm being taught a lesson about proper eating arrangements. Who am I to argue with such determination? Emma's face split into a grin that could have powered the entire mansion. Really? You'll eat with us? Really? As he said it, Marcus felt something strange, a flutter of nervousness, maybe, or anticipation. When was the last time he'd felt nervous about anything as simple as a meal? Sarah led them to the kitchen, clearly flustered, apologizing repeatedly. Marcus waved her off. Mrs. Patterson watched with raised eyebrows as he sat down at the small folding table where Sarah and Emma took their meals. It was a tight fit for three, especially with his 6'2" frame, but Emma seemed delighted by the coziness.
See?
This is better, Emma announced. Now you're not alone. Sarah had prepared chicken salad sandwiches, cherry tomatoes, and sliced cantaloupe. Simple fare, nothing like the elaborate dishes Marcus usually ate. She started to stand, probably to prepare something more elaborate for him, but he gestured for her to sit. This is perfect, he said.
And meant it.
They ate in awkward silence at first. Marcus couldn't remember the last time he'd sat across from someone during a meal, making eye contact, being present. Sarah kept glancing at him nervously, clearly uncomfortable with the power dynamic of her employer at her table. But Emma, bless her, had no such inhibitions. Do you like crusts, Mr. Marcus? She asked, holding up her sandwich. I don't like them much, but Mommy says I should try them anyway. Yes, I suppose I do, Marcus said. That's good, because when you're a grown-up, you have to eat all of it, not just the good parts. Emma took a thoughtful bite. That's what Mommy says about lots of things, not just food. Sarah smiled softly at her daughter. That's right, baby. Life isn't just about the easy parts. Marcus found himself studying them. The easy affection, the gentle teaching, the way Sarah brushed a crumb from Emma's cheek without even thinking about it. These small gestures of care that he'd been living without, that he'd told himself he didn't need. Mr. Marcus, do you have a family? Emma asked suddenly. Emma? Sarah's voice was sharp. That's not polite.
Why?
You always say asking questions is how we learn. Not personal questions about. It's okay, Marcus interrupted. He met Emma's curious gaze. No, I don't have a family. Not anymore. My parents passed away, and I don't have brothers or sisters. Emma's face crumpled with sympathy. That's really sad. Everyone should have family. Emma, Sarah began again. No, she's right, Marcus said quietly. It is sad. I've been sad for a long time, actually. I just didn't realize it until recently. The admission hung in the air. Sarah looked at him with something like understanding, and Emma reached across the table to pat his hand with her small one. Don't worry, Emma said seriously. We can be your lunch family. Then you won't be sad at lunchtime anymore. Marcus felt his throat tighten. This child, this tiny human being, was offering him something no amount of money could buy. Belonging. Connection. A place at the table. I'd like that very much, he managed to say. Emma beamed. Good. Tomorrow we can eat together again. And maybe we can have the cookies Mommy made. They're really good. As they finished their meal, Marcus realized something had shifted. The silence in his mansion didn't seem quite as oppressive. The afternoon ahead didn't feel quite as empty. And the small folding table in the kitchen had become the most important piece of furniture in his entire estate. When lunch ended and Sarah tried to clear the plates, Marcus stopped her. Let me help. She looked shocked. Mr. Whitmore, that's not necessary. If I'm part of the lunch family, he said, echoing Emma's phrase, I should help with cleanup. That's how families work, isn't it? Sarah's eyes grew bright, and she nodded. As Marcus carried plates to the sink, something he honestly couldn't remember ever doing in this house, Emma chattered away about her dolls and her plans for the afternoon. And for the first time in years, Marcus Whitmore felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. The lunch arrangement became routine, with surprising speed. Marcus found himself watching the clock each day as noon approached, anticipating the small folding table in the kitchen with an eagerness that would have baffled his business associates. The man who routinely worked through meals, who'd once forgotten to eat for an entire day during a crucial negotiation, now stopped whatever he was doing when Emma appeared at his office door. She didn't always come get him. Sometimes she simply trusted that he'd show up, and her faith in him felt like a sacred responsibility. By the end of the first week, Marcus had learned more about 3-year-olds than he'd ever imagined possible. He learned that Emma's favorite color was sparkly purple, apparently a color unto itself. That she was afraid of the dark but brave about thunderstorms. That she could spend 20 minutes discussing the emotional life of her stuffed rabbit, Mr. Hops, with complete seriousness. He also learned things about Sarah that filled in the outline of the quiet woman who moved through his house like a ghost. She'd grown up in San Francisco, the daughter of immigrants who'd worked 3 jobs to send her to community college. She'd met her husband, David, at a diner where they both worked nights. They'd had 5 years together. Hard, happy years, before the scaffolding collapse that took his life. "I was pregnant with Emma when it happened," Sarah told him one afternoon, her voice steady but her eyes distant. "I didn't know how I'd manage. But then she was born, and suddenly I had to manage. She needed me." Marcus wanted to say something profound, something that would acknowledge the strength that required, but Emma beat him to it. "Daddy is in heaven," Emma announced, matter of fact, "but he watches me sometimes. Mommy says so." "I'm sure he's very proud of you," Marcus said softly. "He would be," Sarah agreed, pulling Emma close. "You're the best thing we ever made." These moments of intimacy, not his but shared with him, felt like gifts. Marcus began to understand that loneliness wasn't just about being alone. It was about having no one to witness your life, no one to share the small moments that made up the texture of existence. The second week, Marcus started bringing things to lunch. Nothing dramatic, a small vase with flowers from the garden for the table. A set of colorful napkins he'd ordered online. A fruit salad from Mrs. Patterson, because Emma had mentioned loving strawberries. "You don't have to do this," Sarah protested when he presented the napkins. "I know," Marcus said. "But our lunch table should be nice, don't you think?" Emma had squealed with delight at the napkins, which featured cartoon animals. She assigned each of them an animal identity. Sarah was the wise owl, Marcus was the lion because you have important hair, and Emma herself was the bunny because bunnies are lucky. These silly details embedded themselves in Marcus's heart like treasures. He also began timing his work around their meals. Conference calls got scheduled for early morning or mid-afternoon. He delegated more, trusting his team in ways he never had before, because he'd rather be at the folding table than on his laptop. His assistant, Jennifer, had noticed. "Is everything okay?" she'd asked during their weekly check-in. "You've been different lately." "Different how?" "Happier," Jennifer said bluntly. "More patient. You approved the marketing budget without a single argument, and last month you made them revise it 4 times. Marcus had laughed. "Maybe I'm learning to pick my battles."
But the truth was deeper than that.
Emma was teaching him something profound, that presence mattered more than productivity. That connection was its own kind of success. That the most important work he could do might not involve business deals at all. One rainy afternoon, Emma arrived at lunch looking troubled. She picked at her food, uncharacteristically quiet. "What's wrong, sweetie?" Sarah asked, concerned. "Nothing," Emma mumbled. But Marcus had spent enough lunches with her now to read her moods. "Mr. Hops is having a problem," he guessed. Emma's eyes widened. "How did you know?" "You have the same face when Mr. Hops is troubled that I have when my business is troubled," Marcus said seriously. "So, what's bothering Mr. Hops?" Emma's lower lip quivered. "He's worried that when Mommy and I move away someday, he won't remember this house. He likes it here." Sarah's hand froze on her water glass. "Emma, honey, we're not moving anywhere. But we don't live here forever, right? This isn't our real home." Emma looked between them, seeking reassurance. The question landed like a stone in Marcus's chest. Of course they didn't live here forever. Sarah rented a small apartment in town. This job was just a job, this arrangement temporary. Eventually, Sarah might find a better position, or want to move closer to family, or any number of things that would take them away. The thought of the folding table empty again, of eating alone, of this house returning to its mausoleum silence, it was unbearable. Home is where people care about you, Sarah said gently to Emma. It's not about the building. It's about the love inside it. But I want to remember, Emma insisted. I want to remember eating lunch with Mr. Marcus. I want to remember being a family. Marcus's throat closed. Being a family. That's what this had become, hadn't it? Not in any conventional sense, but in the ways that mattered. They shared meals. They shared stories. They shared the daily mundane magic of simply being together. I have an idea, Marcus said suddenly. What if we took a picture? That way, even if things change, we'll all remember our lunch family. Emma's face lit up. Really? With all of us? Sarah looked uncertain. Mr. Whitmore, you don't need to. Please, Marcus said quietly. I'd like to remember too. So they'd posed together at the small folding table, Sarah and Emma on one side, Marcus on the other, Mrs. Patterson conscripted to take the photo on Marcus's phone. Emma had insisted they hold their sandwiches up and smile really big. It was ridiculous and perfect, and when Marcus looked at the photo later, he barely recognized himself. The man in the picture was smiling, genuinely smiling, his eyes warm, his posture relaxed. He looked like someone who belonged to something. Someone who wasn't alone. That night, Marcus did something he hadn't done in years. He called his estranged aunt, his mother's sister, who lived in Maine. Marcus. Her voice was shocked. Is everything okay? Yes, he said. I wanted to talk. To catch up. It's been too long. They spoke for an hour. She told him about her grandchildren, her garden, her book club. He told her about the tech industry, about his company, and then hesitantly about Sarah and Emma. About lunch at the folding table. About learning to be present. Your mother would be so happy, his aunt said, her voice thick with emotion. She worried about you, you know. Worried you'd forget how to let people in. I did forget, Marcus admitted. But I'm remembering now. A 3-year-old is teaching me. His aunt laughed. Children are excellent teachers. They haven't learned to complicate simple truths yet. When they hung up, Marcus sat in his study, not working, just sitting, thinking about simple truths. About how the most valuable lesson he'd learned in years had come from a child who refused to eat alone. About how the smallest act of inclusion had cracked open his carefully constructed isolation. He pulled up the photo on his phone again. Their lunch family, captured in pixels and memory. Emma was right to worry about forgetting. These moments were precious, fragile, temporary. Life moved forward. People left. Nothing stayed the same. But maybe, Marcus thought, that's why presence mattered so much. Because these moments were all we really had. This lunch, this day, this connection. Not tomorrow's plans or yesterday's regrets, but the reality of now. Emma had taught him that. And he would spend the rest of his life grateful for the lesson. 3 weeks into their lunch routine, Emma showed up at Marcus's office with red-rimmed eyes and a trembling lip. He immediately abandoned the financial reports on his screen. Emma? What's wrong? She climbed onto the chair across from his desk, something she'd grown comfortable doing, and folded her small hands in her lap. Mr. Marcus, do you know about being scared? He came around the desk and crouched beside her chair, bringing himself to her eye level. I do. What are you scared of? Tomorrow is Thanksgiving, Emma said, her voice wavering. And Mommy says we have to go visit Grandma and Grandpachin. They're nice, but they live far away and their house smells funny, and I don't want to go. Marcus hid a smile. I see. That does sound challenging. But that's not the scary part. Emma's eyes filled with tears. The scary part is that you'll be all alone on Thanksgiving. You'll have to eat by yourself again, and you won't have a lunch family, and that's really, really sad. The concern in her voice, the genuine distress at his impending solitude, hit Marcus like a wave. This child, who had her own anxieties about the holiday, was worried about him. Emma, I'll be fine, he started. No. Emma shook her head vehemently. You won't be fine. Being alone isn't fine. It's sad and wrong, and somebody should be with you. Sarah appeared in the doorway. Emma, I've been looking everywhere. Oh. She took in the scene, her daughter's tears, Marcus's stricken expression. I'm so sorry, Mr. Whitmore. She's been emotional all morning about the trip. She's worried about me, Marcus said quietly. About me being alone for Thanksgiving. Sarah's expression softened with something like pain. Emma, sweetheart, Mr. Whitmore is a grown-up. He can take care of himself. He probably has plans. I don't, Marcus interrupted. I was going to work, actually. Maybe order some takeout. See. Emma turned to her mother triumphantly, though tears still streaked her cheeks. He's going to work and eat takeout on Thanksgiving. That's terrible. Sarah looked between them, clearly wrestling with something. Mr. Whitmore, would you? I mean, this is completely inappropriate, and I understand if you say no, but would you want to come with us? To my in-laws' house? It's just a few hours upstate, and there will be too much food and too many relatives, and it's probably not at all what you're used to, but… Yes, Marcus said immediately. Both Sarah and Emma stared at him. Yes, he repeated. I'd love to come. If you're sure they wouldn't mind an unexpected guest. They always make enough food for an army, Sarah said, still looking shocked. And they're always saying I should bring friends. I just never thought. I mean, you're my employer. This is so strange. Maybe we could be friends too, Marcus suggested gently. People can be more than one thing to each other. Emma had stopped crying and was now beaming. You're coming to Thanksgiving? Really and truly. Really and truly. She launched herself at him, wrapping her small arms around his neck. Marcus froze for just a moment. He couldn't remember the last time someone had hugged him, and then carefully hugged her back, this tiny teacher who was systematically dismantling every wall he'd built around his heart. Thanksgiving Day arrived with unseasonable warmth and clear skies. Marcus found himself nervous as he dressed. Ridiculous, really, for a man who'd given presentations to thousands without breaking a sweat. But those were business situations. He knew the rules, the expectations. This was different. This was personal. He'd agonized over what to bring. Wine seemed too formal. Flowers too romantic. He'd finally settled on an enormous bakery box of desserts and a collection of craft supplies for the kids, ordered based on Jennifer's advice. You can't go wrong with art supplies for children, and the parents will love you for it. Sarah and Emma picked him up his suggestion, since it seemed silly to take multiple cars. Emma was vibrating with excitement in her car seat, wearing a velvet dress with tights that she kept trying to adjust. Stop fidgeting, Sarah said, catching her daughter's eye in the rearview mirror. You'll get twisted up. But they're uncomfortable. Beauty is pain, Sarah said with a smile, then caught Marcus's amused expression. What? I'm just enjoying seeing you in mom mode. At the house, you're always so professional. Sarah's hands tightened slightly on the steering wheel. I never wanted you to think I was taking advantage, bringing Emma to work. I tried to keep things separate. I know, Marcus said. But I'm glad Emma didn't let you. She's taught me that some boundaries are meant to be crossed. They drove through countryside painted in golds and russets, past farms and small towns, while Emma provided a running commentary on everything she saw. Marcus found himself relaxing, laughing at her observations, enjoying the simple pleasure of a car ride with people he cared about. The Chun family home was a modest two-story colonial in a neighborhood of similar houses, with a lawn full of fallen leaves and a minivan in the driveway. Marcus could hear voices and laughter from inside as they approached. I should warn you, Sarah said, pausing on the porch. They're going to have questions. About who you are, why you're here. My mother-in-law especially. I can handle questions, Marcus said with more confidence than he felt. The door opened before they could knock, revealing a tiny Asian woman in an apron, her face lighting up at the sight of Emma. There's my girl. And Sarah. And, oh. She looked at Marcus with unconcealed curiosity. Mom, this is Marcus Whitmore. We work together. Marcus, this is Linda Chun, my mother-in-law. Mrs. Chun, thank you so much for having me, Marcus said, extending the dessert box. I hope it's not an imposition. Linda took the box, peeked inside, and smiled approvingly. Any friend of Sarah's is welcome. Come in, come in. Everyone's in the living room. The house was warm and chaotic in the best way. Relatives occupied every surface, aunts and uncles and cousins ranging from elderly to infant. Football played on TV while people argued cheerfully about cooking times and recipes. Children ran underfoot. A dog barked somewhere. It was overwhelming and wonderful, and nothing like the sterile silence of Marcus's mansion. Sarah's father-in-law, Robert Chin, shook Marcus's hand with a grip that was both assessing and welcoming. Good to meet you. How do you know our Sarah? I'm well. Sarah works for me, Marcus admitted. I own the house where she's the head housekeeper. A silence rippled through the room. Marcus felt multiple sets of eyes evaluating him, calculating, judging. He understood what they were thinking. Rich man, employee, power dynamic, potential exploitation. He eats lunch with us every day, Emma announced into the silence. He was sad and alone, so I made him join our lunch family, and now we're friends. The tension broke as several relatives laughed. Linda Chin studied Marcus with new interest. Is that so? It is, Marcus confirmed. Your granddaughter taught me that eating alone is unacceptable. She's been educating me in proper social behavior. She's good at that, Robert said with a chuckle. Takes after her mother. Sarah's always collecting strays. Dad, Sarah protested, but she was smiling. The afternoon unfolded in a blur of food and conversation. Marcus found himself peeling potatoes in the kitchen alongside Sarah's sister-in-law, Jen, who grilled him relentlessly about his intentions. So, you just decided to come to Thanksgiving with your housekeeper and her kid? Jen asked, her tone skeptical. That doesn't seem weird to you? It seemed weirder to spend the day alone, Marcus said honestly. And Emma was worried about me. I didn't want to disappoint her. Jen's expression softened slightly. That kid has the biggest heart. She gets it from Sarah. I'm learning that. In the living room, Emma had appointed herself his tour guide, introducing him to every relative, every family tradition, every inside joke. She held his hand and pulled him from room to room with complete trust that he'd follow. And he did, marveling at this child's ability to weave him into her family's fabric as if he'd always belonged. During dinner, a crowded affair with card tables set up to accommodate everyone, Marcus found himself seated between Emma and an uncle who wanted to discuss cryptocurrency. The food was abundant and delicious, nothing fancy, but made with care. People passed dishes, reached across each other, laughed with mouths full, argued about everything from politics to the best way to make gravy. It was messy and loud, and absolutely perfect. When Linda Chin asked everyone to share what they were grateful for, Marcus felt panic flutter in his chest. But when his turn came, the words flowed easily. I'm grateful, he said, for a little girl who refused to let me eat alone. And for her mother, who let me join their family, even though I was basically a stranger. You've all reminded me what it means to belong to something bigger than yourself. So, thank you. Sarah's eyes were bright with unshed tears. Emma reached over and squeezed his hand. You're not a stranger anymore, Mr. Marcus, Emma said solemnly. You're family now. And sitting there, surrounded by the warm chaos of the Chin family Thanksgiving, Marcus realized she was absolutely right. He'd been wrong about so many things, about success, about loneliness, about what mattered. But Emma had been teaching him, one lunch at a time, how to find his way back to himself. Later, as they drove home through the darkness, Emma fell asleep in her car seat, her hand clutching a stuffed turkey she'd won in a family game. Sarah glanced back at her daughter, then at Marcus. Thank you, she said softly, for coming today, for being so good with Emma, for everything. I should be thanking you, Marcus replied. Today was the best Thanksgiving I've had in years. Maybe ever. Really? Sarah sounded surprised. But you've probably been to fancy restaurant Thanksgivings, celebrity chef situations. None of that matters, Marcus said. Today mattered. The people mattered. Emma was right. I was sad and alone. I just didn't want to admit it. But she saw it anyway, and she decided to do something about it. Your daughter is remarkable, Sarah. And so are you. Sarah wiped at her eyes. She is pretty special, isn't she? She's teaching me how to live again, Marcus said quietly. How to be present. How to care about the right things. I didn't know how much I needed that until she refused to let me eat alone. They drove in comfortable silence for a while, the radio playing softly, Emma snoring gently in the back. And Marcus thought about how strange life was, how the most important lessons came from the most unexpected teachers, how 3 weeks ago he'd been a lonely billionaire and now he was part of a lunch family, invited to Thanksgiving, holding hands with a 3-year-old who decided he deserved better. Same time Monday? Sarah asked as they pulled into the mansion's driveway. For lunch. Marcus smiled. I wouldn't miss it for the world. December arrived with the first snow, transforming the mansion's grounds into a winter wonderland that delighted Emma beyond measure. She pressed her face against the windows during lunch, exclaiming over every snowflake, planning elaborate snow angels and snowmen. Can we build one after lunch, Mr. Marcus? She asked, bouncing in her seat. Please? You've never built a snowman before, have you? I haven't, Marcus admitted. Not since I was very young. Then you have to remember how. Emma insisted. It's important. So, after lunch, for the first time in his adult life, Marcus found himself bundled in his expensive winter coat, building a snowman with a 3-year-old. Sarah watched from the terrace, smiling, taking pictures on her phone as Emma directed Marcus, with the seriousness of a construction foreman. No, the middle ball has to be smaller than the bottom one, Emma explained. And we need rocks for buttons and a carrot for the nose. Don't you know anything about snowmen? Apparently not, Marcus said, grinning. You'd better teach me. They worked together, their breath puffing white in the cold air, and Marcus realized he was laughing, really laughing, in a way he hadn't in years. When had joy become so foreign to him? When had he forgotten how to play? The snowman, when finished, was lopsided and wonderful. Emma insisted on taking a picture of the 3 of them together with it, and Mrs. Patterson came out to oblige, bundled in her own coat and shaking her head at the scene. Never thought I'd see the day, she muttered, but she was smiling too. That evening, as Marcus worked in his study, he found himself unable to concentrate. The photo of them with the snowman was on his phone, and he kept looking at it. Emma's gap-toothed grin. Sarah's warm smile. His own face, ruddy from cold and happiness, so different from the stern expression he usually wore. He looked like a father. The thought struck him suddenly, powerfully. Standing there with Emma, helping her build that snowman, he'd felt paternal in a way he'd never experienced. Protective.
Proud.
Connected. It terrified him. Because Emma wasn't his daughter. Sarah wasn't his wife. This wasn't his family, not really. They were his employees, and he was their employer, and there were boundaries that shouldn't be crossed. He'd already blurred too many lines. But even as he thought it, he knew the boundaries were already gone. He loved that little girl. He cared deeply for her mother. And the thought of losing them, of returning to his previous isolation, was unbearable. The next morning, Marcus called his lawyer. I want to set up a trust, he said without preamble. For a child. Emma Chun. Full college tuition, living expenses, everything she'll need. Of course, his lawyer said smoothly. Relationship to the beneficiary? Marcus paused. Friend. She's the daughter of someone who works for me, but more importantly, she's my friend. Understood. And the mother's role in this trust. Sarah Chin should have access to funds for Emma's immediate needs, activities, tutoring, medical care, whatever she requires. But the bulk should be preserved for college and beyond. Very generous. May I ask what prompted this? Marcus looked at the photo of the snowman on his desk. She taught me something important. I want to make sure she has every opportunity to keep teaching the world. But even as he made these arrangements, Marcus knew money wasn't enough. It never had been. Emma didn't need his wealth. She needed his presence, his time, his heart. That week, Marcus started making changes. He delegated more responsibilities to his executive team, people he'd hired specifically because they were brilliant but whom he never fully trusted. He stopped checking emails after 6 p.m. He blocked out lunch from his calendar permanently, marking it as unavailable, without explanation. When Jennifer questioned this, he'd simply said, "It's family time." He also started joining Sarah and Emma for other activities. When Sarah mentioned she was taking Emma to a children's museum on Saturday, Marcus asked if he could come along. When Emma had a doctor's appointment and Sarah seemed stressed about the timing, Marcus offered to drive them, waiting in the lobby with a book while Emma got her checkup. "You don't have to do this," Sarah said repeatedly. "I can manage." "I know you can," Marcus always replied. "But you shouldn't have to do everything alone. Let me help." Slowly, carefully, their relationship shifted. Sarah began treating him less like an employer and more like a friend. She told him things, her worries about affording Emma's future, her fears about dating again, her grief over David that still surfaced at unexpected moments. "Some days I'm fine," she said one afternoon at lunch, while Emma was absorbed in coloring. "And then I'll see something, smell something, remember something, and it hits me all over again. That he's gone. That Emma is growing up without her father." "She has you," Marcus said. "And you're doing an incredible job. But it should be both of us." Sarah's voice cracked. "He should be here, teaching her to ride a bike, reading her bedtime stories, building snowmen." Marcus reached across the table and took her hand, a gesture that would have been unthinkable a few months ago. "He should be. And I'm sure he'd want Emma to know how loved she is, even without him here. You're making sure of that." Sarah squeezed his hand, and something passed between them. Understanding, connection, possibility. Emma looked up from her coloring. "Why are you holding hands?" "Because we're friends," Sarah said, releasing Marcus's hand gently. "And sometimes friends hold hands. Like me and Sophie at daycare," Emma said, nodding seriously. "She's my best friend." "Are you and Mr. Marcus best friends?" Sarah glanced at Marcus, and he saw uncertainty there, maybe even fear. Because naming this thing between them meant acknowledging it was real, and real things could hurt you. "Yes," Marcus said firmly. "We're best friends." Emma grinned. "Good. Best friends should have lunch together every day." That night, Marcus lay awake thinking about the word friend and how inadequate it felt. He cared about Sarah and Emma with an intensity that went beyond friendship. They'd become essential to him, woven into the fabric of his daily life in ways that made his previous existence seem like sleepwalking. But what could he offer them, really? Money, security, a bigger house? Sarah wasn't interested in being rescued. She had her pride, her independence, her determination to make it on her own. And Emma? Emma just wanted someone to eat lunch with, to build snowmen with, to be present with. She wanted him to be real. The next week, as Christmas approached, Emma began making decorations at lunch. Paper snowflakes, construction paper chains, drawings of Santa and reindeer. She draped them around the kitchen with Sarah's help, transforming the utilitarian space into something festive and warm. "Mr. Marcus, does your house have Christmas decorations?" Emma asked one day. Marcus looked around the mansion in his mind. The professional decorators, perfect trees in the foyer and living room, expensive ornaments, everything coordinated and cold. "It has decorations, yes. But did you put them up?" "No, I hired someone." Emma frowned. "That's not the same. Decorations are supposed to be made with love. That's what makes them work." "Makes them work." Marcus was charmed. "What do? They make magic, silly. They make it feel like Christmas." Emma spread her arms wide. "But only if you make them with people you love." Marcus felt the familiar tightness in his chest that Emma's pronouncements always triggered. "Then I suppose my decorations don't work very well." "We could fix it," Emma said thoughtfully. "We could make you decorations. Real ones with love." And so, over the next week, his study was transformed. Emma and Sarah worked during lunch and after, creating handmade ornaments, stringing popcorn, constructing elaborate paper chains. Marcus helped where he could, his large hands clumsy with glue and glitter, but Emma was patient with him. See? You're getting better, she'd encourage. Your star only has a little bit of glue on the wrong side. Sarah would catch his eye over Emma's head, and they'd share a smile. Two adults indulging a child, yes, but also two people rediscovering joy together. When they finally decorated his study, Marcus felt something shift in him. The room, which had always been a temple to work and achievement, became something else. Somewhere a child had laughed. Somewhere love had been present. Somewhere he belonged. Now your decorations work, Emma pronounced, satisfied with their handiwork. Now they have magic. She was right. The room felt different. The whole mansion felt different. Marcus felt different. He was changing, he realized. Becoming someone he barely recognized. Someone who laughed easily, who looked forward to lunch not for the food but for the company, who found himself shopping for Christmas presents with actual enthusiasm, wondering what Emma would like, what would make Sarah smile. Someone who was learning, finally, what it meant to love. Christmas Eve arrived with fresh snow and the kind of crisp cold that made everything feel magical. Marcus had planned to spend the day working. Old habits died hard, but Emma had other ideas. She appeared at his office door at 8 a.m., still in her pajamas, holding a wrapped present. "It's not even lunchtime," Marcus said, amused. "What are you doing here so early?" "Mommy had to come fix something that broke, and I wanted to give you your present before we go to church tonight." Emma climbed into the chair across from his desk, the present clutched to her chest. "Can I?" "Of course." Marcus set aside his laptop, giving her his full attention. Emma handed him the package, wrapped in paper she'd clearly decorated herself, stick figures holding hands, labeled Emma, Mommy, and Mr. Marcus. His throat tightened. Inside was a drawing, carefully done in crayon and marker. It showed the three of them at the small folding table in the kitchen, eating together, smiling. At the top, in Sarah's handwriting, it said, "Our lunch family." "Do you like it?" Emma asked anxiously. "I love it," Marcus said, his voice rough. "It's the best present I've ever received." "Really? Better than expensive stuff." "So much better." He studied the drawing, memorizing every detail. "Because you made it for me. Because it shows us together. That matters more than anything expensive." Emma beamed. "I wanted you to remember that you're not alone anymore. Even when we're not eating lunch, you're still part of our family." Marcus had to set the drawing down because his hands were shaking. This child, this beautiful, wise, generous child, had given him the one thing he'd been missing his entire life: belonging. "Emma, I have something for you too," he said. "But it's not wrapped. It's more of a question." "I like questions." Marcus took a breath. He'd been planning this for weeks, ever since Thanksgiving, but suddenly his carefully rehearsed words vanished. He could only speak from his heart. "These past few months, having lunch with you and your mom, have been the happiest of my life. You taught me that being alone isn't strength, it's just sad. You showed me what family means. And I was wondering—" He paused. "How would you feel if we had lunch together every day forever? If your mom didn't just work here, but if this was your home? Your real home?" Emma tilted her head, considering. "Like we'd live here? In the big house?"
Yes.
"And I'd see you every morning and every night, not just at lunch. We'd be a real family." "But Mommy isn't married to you," Emma said, ever practical. "You have to be married to be a real family." "Actually," came Sarah's voice from the doorway, "families can look lots of different ways." Marcus turned. Sarah stood there, and he couldn't read her expression. Had she heard everything? "How much?" "Mommy, Mr. Marcus wants us to live here forever and be a family," Emma announced. "Is that okay?" Sarah walked into the room slowly, her eyes on Marcus. "Mr. Whitmore, can we talk privately for a moment?" "Of course." Marcus stood, his heart pounding. "Emma, could you go color in the kitchen? We'll be right there." Emma skipped out, humming, oblivious to the tension. As soon as she was gone, Sarah spoke. "Marcus, what are you doing?" "I'm asking you to stay," he said simply. "Both of you. Not as my employees. As my family. You can't just, we're not, this is complicated." Sarah paced, agitated. The power dynamic, the circumstances, what people would think. I don't care what people think. Marcus moved closer to her. I care about you. About Emma. About not losing what we've built together. What we've built. Marcus, I work for you. Emma and I are a package deal that you've been kind enough to include in your life. But that doesn't mean... Stop. He took her hands. Sarah, look at me. Do you think this is about kindness? About charity? I'm not being generous here. I'm being selfish. Because I love having lunch with you both. I love hearing Emma's laugh in this house. I love talking with you about everything and nothing. I love the way you both made this empty mansion feel like a home. I love... He stopped. The word caught in his throat. You love what? Sarah whispered. You, Marcus said. I love you. Both of you. And I know it's complicated and weird and started in the strangest way possible, but I can't imagine going back to how things were before.
Please don't make me.
Sarah's eyes filled with tears. Marcus, I'm a single mother. A housekeeper. You're a billionaire. This doesn't make sense. Since when has love made sense? He cupped her face gently. Emma taught me that what matters isn't logic or status or any of that. What matters is showing up. Being present. Caring about each other. We do that. Every day at lunch, we do that. I'm scared, Sarah admitted. Of this being too good to be true. Of you changing your mind. Of Emma getting hurt if this doesn't work. I'm scared too, Marcus said. I've never done this before. Never let anyone this close. But Emma didn't let fear stop her from insisting, I join your lunch table. Maybe we shouldn't either. Sarah laughed through her tears. She really did change everything, didn't she?
She did.
She's the best teacher I ever had. Sarah reached up and touched his face. I love you too. I've been trying not to, but I do. And Emma adores you. But we can't just rush into this. Then we won't rush, Marcus said. We'll take it slow. You and Emma can move into the guest wing, separate space, your own home within the house. We'll keep having lunch together, keep building what we've started. And when you're ready, if you're ready, we can talk about making it more official. More official how? Marcus pulled out a small box from his desk drawer. Sarah's eyes widened. I'm not proposing, he said quickly. Not yet. Not until you're ready. But this is a promise. He opened the box to reveal a delicate necklace with 2 pendants, a tiny fork and spoon, intertwined. A promise that you'll always have a place at my table. That we're family now, no matter what form that takes. Sarah took the necklace with trembling hands. It's perfect. Say yes, Marcus urged. Say you'll stay. Say we can figure this out together. Yes, Sarah whispered. Yes, we'll stay. Marcus pulled her into his arms, and they stood there in his study, holding each other, while outside the snow fell, and inside the decorations Emma made sparkled with their love-given magic. Emma's voice rang out from the kitchen. Are you done talking? Because it's almost lunchtime. They broke apart, laughing. We should tell her, Sarah said. Together, Marcus agreed. In the kitchen, Emma had set the small folding table with extra care, the colorful napkins, a small vase with winter greenery, 3 plates arranged just so. Guess what, Emma? Sarah said, kneeling beside her daughter. Mr. Marcus invited us to live here. Would you like that? Emma's face lit up like Christmas morning. Really? Forever and ever. Forever and ever, Marcus confirmed. Emma threw her arms around his legs, then Sarah's, trying to hug them both at once. This is the best present. Now we can have lunch together every single day. And breakfast.
And dinner.
We'll be together all the time. Is that okay with you? Marcus asked, lifting her up. Having me around all the time? Emma put her small hands on his cheeks, serious. Mr. Marcus, you were lonely and sad. Now you're happy. That's what matters. And you know what? What? You're really good at being part of a family now. You learned. Marcus felt tears prick his eyes. I had an excellent teacher. They ate lunch together that day at the small folding table. Even though Marcus had a huge dining room, even though there was now going to be space for them in the formal areas of the house. Because this table, this small humble table, was where it had all started. Where a 3-year-old girl had refused to let a billionaire eat alone. Where walls had come down and hearts had opened. Where a family had been born. Later, Marcus would move them into the guest wing, which Sarah would slowly transform into a real home. Later, there would be lawyers and paperwork and questions to navigate. Later, he would officially propose to Sarah on another snowy day, with Emma as his co-conspirator, and she would say yes with happy tears. Later, there would be a wedding in the garden, small and perfect, with Emma as flower girl and the Chin family filling the mansion with warmth and noise. Later, Marcus would legally adopt Emma, giving her his name and making official what had been true for months. She was his daughter in every way that mattered. Later, there would be another child, a son, with Emma's eyes and Sarah's smile, and then another daughter. The mansion would fill with the chaos of family life, with toys scattered on marble floors and children's laughter echoing in halls that had known only silence. Later, Marcus would step back from his company, training successors, because he'd learned that the most important work he could do was being present for his family. He'd coach Emma's soccer team and attend every school play. He'd hold Sarah's hand through the hard days and celebrate with her through the good ones. He'd grow old surrounded by love instead of luxury. But all of that was later. Today, Christmas Eve, they were just 3 people eating lunch together. A small family around a small table. Nothing fancy. Nothing expensive. Just presence. Just love. Just the simple magic of being together. Emma raised her juice box. "A toast," she announced. "To our lunch family." Sarah and Marcus raised their glasses, smiling at each other over Emma's head. "To our lunch family," they echoed. And in that moment, in that small kitchen in that big house, with snow falling outside and love warming them inside, Marcus Whitmore understood what he'd been missing all along. Not success. Not wealth. Not achievement.
Just this.
Just the simple, profound grace of belonging to someone. Of being seen, being known, being loved. Emma had taught him the most important lesson of all, that the richest life wasn't measured in dollars, but in moments. In shared meals and genuine laughter. In small hands holding his. In being part of something bigger than himself. She taught him that love wasn't about grand gestures. It was about showing up. Day after day. Meal after meal. Choosing connection over isolation. Choosing presence over productivity. Choosing again and again to be part of a family. And he would spend the rest of his life grateful for the little teacher who'd refused to eat alone. Who'd insisted, with the fierce certainty only a child possesses, that everyone deserved a place at the table. That everyone deserved to be loved. That he deserved to be loved. Outside, the snow continued to fall, blanketing the world in white. Inside, the lunch family sat together, talking and laughing, planning tomorrow and cherishing today. And the small folding table, which had once seemed so humble, held the weight of their happiness perfectly. Because Emma had been right all along. This was what made decorations work. What made houses become homes. What made lonely hearts learn to love again. This simple, extraordinary magic. Being together.